Hey there, guys, and a big welcome back to the Blaze TV podcast at Kimberley with Stu Coles. And our guest on this edition is new Coventry Blaze forward, Brandon Alderson. Brandon, it's really good to meet you, buddy, and good to have you on our side for a change, eh?
Yeah, great to meet you guys too. And that'll be interesting playing in Coventry this season and definitely against Cardiff. It'll be fun to play against those guys, but super excited to come and meet all the fans and get going here.
It's actually getting quite scarily close. I've got to the point, I think everybody gets this, whether you're, I don't know, volunteers, staff, fans, players, got to that point in the summer where I'm kind of bored now. And, there's only so much golf one man can play. And just want to get the boys over here, start getting some skates on the ice and whatnot. I imagine you kind of feel pretty similar right now.
Yeah, it's always funny how it goes. Like towards the end of the season, summer's around the corner, and for me, I want to get back in the gym and golf and do things like that. But now, as time's moved on here, we're getting ready to get back on the ice, and I'm kind of hounding to get back on the ice and get back at it and start competing and actually playing for something.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And hopefully you don't mind killing 20 minutes, half an hour or so of a trip down memory lane. I'm not going to go too far back. We'll just kind of drop a pin in your time in the Ontario League as a place to start, because I mean, for those who don't really follow the Canadian Hockey League, the Ontario League is pretty much regarded as the premier out of kind of the three. Let's just talk about the draft as well, because like with the NHL, you go to the Q, the Dub, or the Ontario League, and you have the draft. You get picked up by Sarnia. What were your memories like of being drafted? What's it like as a 16-year-old to kind of have to take all that in?
Yeah, and before I get started, I'm glad that you said the Ontario League is the best one because we have multiple battles every year with guys on which is the best. So thank you for saying that. Um, I'm trying to think. Yeah, back then, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I think I was leaning more towards school, so it didn't really matter for me where I went in the draft. I think I ended up in the sixth round to Sarnia there, and it was great. I just went down to the camp and the first year and didn't really have any big expectations. I don't think there was any talks of me making the team or anything. I think they already kind of had that set in place with their first and second, third round picks, the guys that were taken there. And then, yeah, my second year, it was like same thing. I was going to stay local here for my junior A team, the Oakville Blades. I kind of played a few games with them when I was 16, and then that was the plan to play there and then potentially go to school, right? So it was funny how it worked. My mom, I still remember, told me, hey, just go down and get the experience, and you come back and play for Oakville, and that's it. And I ended up going down, and then they wanted me to stay, and I made the team. And then so I remember, yeah, it was like a crazy 48 hours. We drove, it's not too far, it's about 2.5 hours, and we drove back home because I didn't have any of my things, packed up all my stuff. I had to enroll in my last year of high school there as well. And yeah, it's kind of a blessing in disguise. I think it kind of worked out for me, and moving on into pro, it definitely helped me out. So
Was it one of those funny things in life where you kind of got down there for camp and you just realized, yeah, this is right, and hence you drive back real quick, pack up everything you can in a duffel bag and head back down?
yeah, I think for most kids, like the OHL is the most kind of enticing league or appealing league. I think most kids, when they grow up, they see the OHL. It's kind of like a mini NHL in a sense, just with all the like equipment, and the arenas are pretty full and things like that. Um, I think it's definitely like kids want to go to the OHL first, and I think when you get a little bit older, and that school package is kind of brought up, then it kind of weighs on some kids. But yeah, once I got down there and saw the facility and like the player, you're kind of just in awe, because from minor hockey to that is a big transition, right? So
Oh yeah.
uh, once they offered that, it's kind of hard to say no right then and there, because I only had a couple hours to decide really. So
Wow. Gosh. And it was quite a not just for Sanya, but for the Ontario League in general that year. It was a pretty solid draft class. I mean, you've got Tyler Sagan, Tyler Toffoli, Jamie Alexiak, Kyle Palmieri, a whole bunch of other NHLers. I mean, it was a stacked draft. So it must have been pretty cool to be part of that, that whole process.
Yeah, I like to think that the 92 age group, like when I was growing up, it was super competitive. And I think compared to some of the other age groups, we had a lot of good high end players that's kind of, have blossomed in the NHL now. I think it's super tough, as you know, just to just turn
Mm.
pro, let alone be an NHL, star. And I think yeah, I mean, the names that you just mentioned, a lot of those guys have had big impacts in the NHL. So yeah, I like to think that the 92 age group, Canadians and Americans, because we played teams from all over when we
Oh yeah.
were in minor hockey. So I got to see all of the best 92 players, and yeah, I think we had a good draft class for sure.
Yeah, let's talk about Sanya a little bit though, because when you came in, I mean that first season as a group was a little bit challenging by the look of it. Did you kind of come in when they were at a bit of a rebuild phase? Because you kind of have that in junior hockey, don't you? You kind of have an age class that kind of get to their overage and move on and graduate up to whatever it is, pro hockey, youth sports, or whatever. So what was it like walking into that Sarnia team? Where were they in their life cycle?
Yeah, I think if I'm not wrong, I think Stamkos era, because he was the
Yeah.
big dog there just before, and they had success with him. I think he was just leaving when I was drafted. So that first 16-year-old year, I didn't play, but he was off the team that year. And then when I was 17 and made the team, yeah, I think we had a tough season. I think we lost like 20 games in a row or something like that.
Mm.
And we were last place, coaches were getting fired, things like that. But I think looking back at it, it was good for me because I kind of came on as, someone that wasn't really expected to make the team, I guess. And that allowed me to get some playing time as if I was on a really good team, I might have not even made the team, let alone get any playing time. So yeah, I think that was good for me that we struggled, just so I could get, my feet wet in the league and kind of show what I could bring to a team. And then, yeah, that like kind of ultimately led me getting traded to Sault Ste. Marie, which is kind of where I found better success in that league. So,
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that in a second, actually. But I mean, just I know we like to talk about team first, but it is important to celebrate the individual achievements as well. And coming in as a first year, as a rookie, and finishing tied for third in goals on the team, that must have been pretty, a bit of a booster for you after what was as a team a pretty ropey season.
yeah, like I can still remember. So I'm making the team, and then the home opener, which it doesn't matter what league or what team you're on, it's always a huge game, and it's a lot of energy. Everybody's jacked up, and I got scratched that game, and I was really disappointed. But again, first year rookie, didn't have too many expectations, and then somehow I found my way into the lineup, and then I kind of just steadily, scored here and there. I mean, that's always been kind of one of my strengths. So just kind of showing them that I could play in that league and on that team was big for me. And yeah, just having that confidence, I think that's big for me too. Having confidence and knowing that you're good enough to be there helped me out big time. Yeah.
Yeah, and let's talk about that trade. It was after your second year in Sarnia, so you had another year that kind of went similar to the first in many ways. You progressed a little bit in terms of your individual kind of output. The team kind of, like I said, did pretty much similar things to the first year. Was it a little bit bittersweet at the time because, like you said, Sarnia had opened your eyes to actually, I want to play in the Ontario League. I've got a chance here. I'm going to do this.
Mhm.
But also, Sue had a pretty rough year that year as well, hadn't they? I think they finished bottom and Sarnia was second bottom.
Yeah, and so I tell this story too. The funny thing is, like, our coaches there, if they were mad or yelling at us, they'd be like, "Oh, we're gonna trade you to the Sioux if you guys don't perform." And lo and behold, I got traded this summer. It was different coaching staff and whatnot that traded me, but that was kind of the joke, I guess you could say, that they would say when guys weren't performing. But again, for me, I think that was a huge blessing in disguise. Again, I had a great relationship with the coach there at the time. It was Mike Stapleton, and then Sheldon Keefe took over, and they were both great to me and understood my game and what I needed to be successful. And I think in our last year with the Sioux, we kind of paved the way for the teams that have been coming out of the Sioux now. We were pretty good back then, and I think since I've left, or since like that core of guys that were there at the
Mm.
left, the Sioux has been pretty competitive every single year. So that's good to see. I still follow them a little bit, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, it was fun. I love my time there. I still talk to some of the guys there from there. Sorry. But yeah, it was honestly, if I didn't get traded there, I don't know where I would be now. So
Yeah, it's funny how life has a way of working itself out. I'd completely forgotten that you had Sheldon Keefe as your coach. I mean, he must have been young. I mean, he's young now for a coach, but he must have been young back then. Was he pretty much fresh out of his playing days at that point?
yeah, so I had Kyle Dubas was there. I think it was his
Yeah.
second year as a GM, so he traded for me, and that's a little bit of a connection that I have with my gym that I train at here. But they traded over for me, and then yeah, the second year when Sheldon took over, I think he had success for a junior A team. I think it was Pembroke, if I'm not mistaken, Pembroke
Okay.
Lumber King. They might have won, 2 or 3 years in a row or something like that. So it was kind of his time to move up. But yeah, he was young. I don't know how old he was, probably mid 30s, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Uh, and he came in, and he took over, and yeah, I had a lot of success under him as well, which I'm thankful for, and I'm glad to see him, doing very well as himself. So
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you look at quite a lot of alumni that have even come through the elite league and ended up in the Ontario League as a coach, and then have kind of gone on to the NHL. I mean, Drew Bannister, I think recently, who was in Glasgow, ended up in the NHL somewhere. But I digress because I want to talk about you a little bit more. So that second year with Sault Ste. Marie, it was kind of the reversal of the first few years, wasn't it? Because you made the playoffs, you went pretty well in the playoffs, if I remember. I was at the second round.
yeah.
You led the team in goals. What was it about that year, do you think, that clicked? Was it just the amalgamation of, what you'd done for the previous few years?
Yeah, I think, if you're a 20-year-old player in the OHL, like you need to put up numbers. Like that's kind of there's only three 20-year-olds allowed.
Yep.
And yeah, you're 20, so you could be playing against, 16, 17-year-olds. And that could be a big difference, right? Especially when you're growing and, filling in your body with muscle and whatever. Just those 2 years could be a huge difference. For me, if I was playing against a 16-year-old, like I should be able to dominate. That's kind of the mindset that I went in with. And I mean, the players I was playing with, obviously, like Nick Cousins was my centerman, and he's had a great career so far. I just won the
Mhm.
Stanley Cup there with Florida. And then David Brohl was on my left wing, who I still talk to most of the time. And sometimes it was another Russian guy, Sergei Tolchinsky, who's doing unbelievable in the KHL right now. So, having those guys kind of on my line helped me big time for sure. And like Nick also too was probably the reason that I signed with Philadelphia, because they were coming to scout him, and then they saw me. So yeah, it kind of just all worked out. Again, I said if I didn't get traded to Sioux, who knows where I'd be right now, right? So
You'd have probably landed on your feet by the sounds of things. But you've teed me up nicely there to talk about another Blaze alumni in good old David Brawl. He was here for about a year and a half, and quite the character. It must have been fun playing with David, eh?
oh yeah, awesome. Still talk to him to this day. I actually saw him at the golf course before I signed randomly. Was asking him some questions about Coventry and things like that. But yeah, great guy, big character, like you said, like life of the room type of guy. And yeah, he's awesome. And he's doing well down here. He's doing it with his firefighting. So
Yep.
yeah, good to see. Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned him on the golf course. I'll tell a very brief David Brawl story if you don't mind. We did a Blaze Golf Day a couple of years back, and he volunteered to kind of do the drinks cart. So he was going to not play all 18, just kind of chip in here and there, and bring the cart around. And I was kind of teasing him a little bit about it on a little par three, which is only maybe 120 yards. I was, come on, man, you've got to hit a couple shots here. And he's basically barefoot, picks an iron out of someone's bag, just throws a ball on the tee, just stands in front of it, bang, puts it like 5 feet, gets back in the car, and drives off again. I was like, man, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
he can play. No, he's a pretty good golfer. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you also teed me up to talk about another big chapter in your life, and that was getting an entry level contract with the Flyers. And I guess as a kid growing up, like you say, you kind of dream about maybe being an Ontario boy anyway, playing in the O, and the next stage after that is to get an NHL contract and end up in the show. So what was that feeling like when Philly gave you a call and said, we want to sign you? How was that?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. That's a good story too, because the lockout was on that year. So, no one knew really what was going on. And I didn't really think I had a shot. I was kind of looking at universities here, like CIS schools,
Yeah.
and kind of thinking that's where I was going to go. And I think it was maybe around November, December, the one day my agent called and he said, "Hey, I think it was Toronto actually at the time, said, hey, they're interested. This is what we're looking at, blah, blah, blah." And then they couldn't sign me because the lockout was on.
Yeah.
So fast forward, I think to March, I think by that time there was 6, 7 teams calling now.
Wow.
And kind of like a little bit of a bidding war, I guess, in a sense. And yeah, we ended up deciding to go with Philly. That was like the best option. And that was just crazy. I couldn't believe it because at the time I thought I was going to go to school and kind of continue on from there. And here we are, yeah, signing an NHL deal. It was like, yeah, like you said, kind of like a dream moment come true. So,
So if you had a few teams kind of chasing you down, why did you end up picking Philly?
uh, I think my agent at the time just thought that that would be the best place, kind of looking at their roster and seeing where I would
Mhm.
fit in. Like, I don't think at the time they had like a big, like righty power forward. Well, they had Wayne Simmons. I don't know. It was just kind of guidance from my agent and
Sure.
how the deal looked and worked out. So
And the other thing as well about that, which is pretty big, is you ended up going undrafted in the NHL, which I think maybe a little bit of a surprise, being the frame that you've got, the ability to move around. Maybe it was a little bit of being hidden in a Sarnia team. I think would have been your draft year before you got traded that was struggling. So that must have been particularly gratifying to end up signing that deal after going through being passed over.
yeah, for sure. I was disappointed for sure when I was not taken. I think I remember being on like the pre-draft list. So I thought, okay, maybe there's a chance. And then, not getting drafted definitely hurt a little bit. But I knew there was still a chance to even just get like a degree out of it if I went to school, or maybe an AHL contract or something like that. But yeah, when it came and they called, it was, yeah, super exciting. And yeah, I was grateful for it. So
I've whittled on at you for a little while, so I'll hand over to Stu to pick up turning pro.
Yeah, see, you get to the end of your sort of your time in the Sioux, and then you sort of report pretty much straight to Adirondack.
yeah.
What's that transition like from going sort of OHL major juniors, where you are playing in on some nights, 16, 17-year-olds, you're then into the AHL, bigger people, grown men, faster. What's that transition like, and how did that feel?
Yeah, it was, well, first off, it was nice that so we lost out in playoffs, and then me and Nick flew right down to Glens Falls there, Adirondack. So to have someone that you're familiar with, and we played together, we actually lived together too in Sault Ste. Marie. So having someone like that, right away makes you feel a bit more comfortable because yeah, you're going into a room of men. So that's a little different. But yeah, we're coming, being the top guys on our team, and then coming to Adirondack, we had no idea where we'd be, and they kind of just slotted us in on the fourth line, I think, for like 3 weeks, and got some games because I don't think they were in playoffs that year. Well, we didn't make playoffs when I was there, anyways. But yeah, it's definitely a different game for sure. Like I remember going up against, because we were on the fourth line, and they still had some of the big time fighters in the league at that time. I remember, I think his name was Steve McIntyre, and he's like coming up the ice just like barking at us because we're 20, and I was so scared. And just like things like that. But the guys, I think they had experience with, these major junior players or college free agents coming in, and they took care of us. I think he played in Sheffield, or yeah, he did, the Cullen Eddy.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
why they do that Eddie thing. I don't even really know what it is, but I heard about it. Like, just for example, like he was, I think, 28 at the time, and he kind of took me in. Another player, Tyler Brown, who I actually just saw this weekend. They were super nice to us and kind of helped us find our way. So if you have guys like that, it's pretty easy to kind of get into the groove there. But yeah.
And that probably helped, right? Because in your first season there in Adirondack, you end up, was it third in the team for goals? Again, sort of getting to a new team and sort of settling well. Do you think that was a good achievement for your first full year in the AHL?
Obviously, I think as a rookie, like again, you don't really have too many expectations. I think even the jump from major junior to pro, like AHL, is harder than from minor hockey to OHL. It's just that much better. But I remember it was me, Nick, and Peter Straka. All three of us were rookies, and they kind of just had us on the third line, and then we had like second power play minutes, and they kind of just let us play and figure it out, which was nice for us. And I ended up having a pretty good season, I thought. And after that season was over, the Flyers were in playoffs, and they brought up, I think, 4 or 5 of us to be like a black ace, so where you just kind of skate and be ready if need be. And that was a really cool experience to kind of see. And that was kind of like the first taste of, the NHL in a sense. So, yeah.
And what is that experience like? Because it's something we've not covered really before. When you get called up as one of those black aces, you're not on the roster, but you're there in every other part, aren't you?
Yeah, I think it varies from team to team on how they treat those players. In Philadelphia, so their practice facility has 2 sides. One was the Phantom side, and one was the Flyer side. So the Phantoms used to be there, I think, a while back. So we wouldn't even see the other players. We would actually be on the Phantom side and skate like 5 of us, 2 goalies, and then maybe 2 or 3 coaches. Just skate and get a workout in, and then have the rest of the day, and then watch the games. It was about 2 weeks, I would say, that we were there. Yeah.
Nonetheless, a good experience to kind of take it in and see what the facilities are and the setup and professionalism. It gives you a kind of that idea of how things are sort of heading.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, it was super cool. I remember even going in, and there was like reps for like Bauer and CCM and stuff, and they're like, "Here, try this, try this, try this." And like in the AHL, you only get like CCM stuff, so it's pretty cool to kind of tinker around with equipment. I wouldn't say that I would be so excited now. I don't really care too much about my gear, but at the time when I was 21, I was like, in a candy shop with all the stuff that they were giving us. Yeah, it was pretty cool. And then to see like, the big NHL, like Claude Giroux was there, the Cavalier, just seeing them skate and train and stuff it was pretty cool.
In the back of my ear, I've got Blaze equipment manager Ethan Kane going, "What do you mean you don't care about your gear?"
I'm just not super picky. Like I've never been one to, I need this exactly like this and things like that. I've already spoken to him and kind of told him what I like, but I'm not a high maintenance guy, I guess is the word to put it.
Yeah. And one of the other things that we've never really covered before. So you're playing in Adirondack, and then you don't move, but the team does.
Yeah.
So Adirondack moves to Lehigh Valley, and that's not, geographically, it may not be small. It may be small in the US, but that's so like a 4 or 5 hour drive south into sort of out of New York. And what's it like when your team moves? How do you cope with that?
Yeah, it was interesting. Like, so Glens Falls is a super, super small town. I think maybe 15 or 20,000 people. So it was it was a little tough living there, to be honest with you. But the fans were great. I can't knock them. I think for that to hold an AHL team is kind of a bit of a stretch. And then I think they also had issues, like you said, with the location. If they wanted to call someone up from the East Coast League, it was like a 4 or 5 hour drive, which isn't ideal. But yeah, so moving to Lehigh, it was cool. Like the rink there is unbelievable. It's like a mini NHL rink. Like the facility is awesome. Town was all right, I guess. They're kind of building everything around the rink there. They're kind of making a whole new downtown. So that was kind of exciting to be there for the first couple of years. Like there's a ton of restaurants and stuff, and we were kind of like, I guess, like the rock stars that were kind of bringing that in, so the restaurants and people around treated us really well, because we were kind of, like I said, the guys that were kind of bringing that in. So it was cool, and it's kind of in between Philly and Reading, so I think for the organization it made sense because they're all 3 like right in a row there. So
And you did split over the next couple of years. You did split time between Lehigh and Reading between the AHL and the ECHL. How do you manage that? Particularly, do you have to up sticks and move to the place, or because they're that close, are you able to sort of have one place and sort of drive between the two?
Yeah. So the first year I was, yeah, the first year in Lehigh, I had an apartment with my roommate, and Reading was about, I would say, like a 50-minute drive. So they had an apartment for me there in Reading, but I just chose to drive. That was my home, like in Lehigh. So I had everything there, and that was more comfortable for me. I didn't mind the drive really. And if we played like back-to-back games or something, then I would stay overnight in Reading. But other than that, yeah, I would kind of drive back and forth, and yeah, I have to bring all my gear and everything. It's kind of annoying, but it makes sense for the team, right? Because I think again, if they were in Glens Falls and they were short a player, they probably would just play short instead of calling someone up. Because sometimes I would be in Lehigh and they'd say, "Hey, we just want you to go play in Reading for tonight, and then you'll be back." And so it's easy as that. Yeah.
Which the geographic location there does help. We mentioned there about Blaze and alumni in the past. Another one that you kind of played some time with, Andrew
Oh,
Johnston.
yeah. I was just about to say Johnny. Yeah. I
Um,
think again, I have such a bad memory with these. I think, well, I know for parts of it when I was driving back and forth. I think for the one year I would, if I was staying overnight, it would be with Johnny, and he'll laugh if he sees this, but he put me on to this breakfast where it was just like an omelet with ham and broccoli. I mean, ham is normal. I don't know if broccoli is, and to this day I still have it from time to time. But yeah, Johnny is an awesome dude. I messaged him about here as well, and talking about the school and stuff like that. So I think he's an agent now, and still kind of in the hockey business. So
yeah, I'm sure there'll be a few Blaze, present and future people trying to get some information from him. As the hockey world is always very small. There's a lot of players who've played with a lot of people in a lot of places.
sure.
You went on with Reading, and you had a couple of some postseason appearances there, and there was one stretch where you had a bit of a run where you ended up in 2 Game 7s in a stretch. That must have been tough going as a player, because playoff hockey is brutal enough as it is, but then to effectively play 14 games straight, 2 Game 7s, how hard is that?
Yeah, it's definitely tough on the body. I mean, it doesn't. I think no matter the schedule, that amount of games, it's tough, and especially with the travel. I think the one series was against Toledo. Can't remember who the other team was, but yeah, some of those trips are like 6, 7, 8 hours, and going back and forth. It was South Carolina, I believe, and that's like a 10 or 12 hour trip. Yeah, you kind of just you're almost in like a zombie state. You kind of just go into the rink, doing what you need to do, go play the game, rest, recover, repeat until the series is over.
Yeah, they often players who come over to Europe, not just in the UK but to Europe, they'll often talk about the grind that the ECHL is, and the travel. So, definitely in the playoffs when you're playing so many games in such a short space of time, it's no wonder that the travel factors in. But you continued traveling, because you then ended up moving south to Greenville, and had a successful time there. Was it good there to sort of be getting the minutes and getting goals, leading the team, sort of really sort of establishing yourself at that level?
Yeah, I think I had it in me in Reading. I think just the situation was wrong there. I mean, I don't need to get into it, but the guys that have played there know exactly what I'm talking about. And then so kind of going to Greenville was like a fresh start away from that. And again, I had really good players to play with. And yeah, the coach there, he trusted me and kind of let me play my game. Whereas, beforehand, I was kind of being told what to do, don't do this, don't do that. And for me, that doesn't always work out. So, yeah, I think a lot of us had great years there. And, it's a great place to play. The fans were awesome. I mean, living in South Carolina is awesome. Yeah, no, it was fun. We liked it a lot.
And you mentioned that you're living in South Carolina, and in that year in Greenville, you end up in the postseason, and you're playing the Stingrays. What sort of atmosphere is that like for sort of ECHL playoff game, Greenville vs South Carolina?
See, I don't think it's like how you guys have like the Derby games. It didn't really change much, I don't think. Um, Other than it was closer drive for us. That was the biggest thing. But for me personally, I think that was the third year in a row that we played South Carolina, like the Stingrays in the playoffs, and I hated that rink. Like the ice was so bad because it was hot there, and I hated being there. So, I mean, I had some friends on the Stingrays actually that year, so it was fun to play them. But yeah, they ultimately ended up beating us out. So
Ed.
Yeah, and at that point, Europe beckoned. Why kind of did you take the decision to skip the pond and come play in Europe at that time?
I just felt like I didn't like again in the East Coast, you're not getting paid very much. The travel is brutal. Like you're doing overnight trips, like 12 hours on the bus. And for me, like I'm bigger, so they have like bunk beds on the bus, but I didn't really fit. And I was just kind of getting sick of it. And I'm like, this isn't really like hockey to me. And one of my old teammates, his name is Kevin Gumas. He was from Reading. He was over playing in Sweden, and I kind of reached out to him, and we were talking. And this was like late in the summer as well. I think it was like towards the end of August. And I just said, hey, do you have like a European agent that can maybe find something for me? And I don't know exactly why I just decided it, but I just thought it was time. I think playing in Europe is better if you're not going to get a sniff at the NHL. And I think I was 26 when I kind of moved over. And to me, I would say that's if you're under or over 25, you're probably chances of making it are pretty slim, right? So, I mean, there's still a dime a dozen that do it. And that's awesome to see. But for the most part, I think if you're comfortable with going overseas, it's a great experience, and it's like super cool. I wouldn't trade it for anything, that decision.
Yeah, I always think I obviously not having played pro hockey and not not from North America. I kind of feel like if I was in those shoes, I'd get to the point where like even if like I was super lucky and got to play in the NHL and was kind of at that level, you only have a finite number of years in you where you're playing the game. And it can open so many doors to like go and play in Europe and go and play in places that you never would see.
Mm-hmm.
You never even think of going. And I don't think I mean, you may regret going to some place, it doesn't work out and whatever, and you end up going somewhere else. But generally speaking, everybody who's done that experience has loved it. And, it is really because you're still a young guy at the end of the day when you're over there, like you say, 26, 27, even in your early 30s, you're still, forming who you are as a human being. So, super valuable experience. And you're also still shaping who you are as a hockey player. You get to play in maybe different roles that you haven't for a while. And so you got to play a lot of minutes in Greenville there, but you got to play a lot of minutes in Heilbronner as well, where you're one of the top dogs for that
Yeah.
first year. You led the team in points. Did you kind of feel that you adapted to Euro hockey pretty quick? Because that's the other big thing, isn't it? It's a whole different ball game than the East Coast, for example.
Yeah, like I remember obviously the biggest thing is the ice, right? But
Mhm.
me, it didn't really affect me that much. Like I thought if anything, I have a little bit more room to use, for my size and my skating ability. And, I think that kind of helped out for me. But yeah, I think I adjusted pretty quick. Again, had a coach who kind of let me do my own thing and, let me play how I wanted to. And yeah, it was a pretty successful year for myself there. And I think for the team, I don't know how they were the year before, but I think they were pretty happy with our season as well. So it was good.
And it kind of, like you said, there's tiers to the Euro game as well, right? It's a pretty clear pathway in terms of North America. You've got the Fed, the SP, the Coast, the American League, and the NHL, pretty much in that order. But yeah, Europe's a little more scattergun, shall we say? But certainly that year earned a leg up for the next few years. So you ended up in Villach, which in what was the EBEL, the ICHL now. That to start with is a beautiful place to go and play some hockey, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it was awesome. So my coach from Helbron was played in Vloc before he switched to coaching, and I think he was born there too. Yeah. but he wanted me to come along because he took the coaching job in VLAC after that season in Elbron. So that worked out perfectly for me. Yeah, and like you said, we lived like the imports lived right on a lake called Fakamsi,
Oh
and
well.
yeah, it was awesome. We had the mountains in the background. Like we would go golfing from time to time, like right along the water with mountains in the background. Yeah, it was an awesome place to play. Fans are really good there. Um, but we struggled big time that season, and so it was kind of a tough year for the team and myself. So
Yeah, I was just going to say it was in some ways similar by the sounds of it to your experience in Sarnia. There was so much of it that was right, but the end result, the kind of missing out on the playoffs and coming pretty far down the table, it stinks, doesn't it?
yeah, no, I do you have the stat line there? I think we ended up finishing last place, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. Yeah. So anytime, yeah, you're at the bottom of the league, it's not fun. Like it's long days coming to the rink, when you're not winning and things like that. So that's like winning is important to kind of keep the spirits up. And
Mm.
there wasn't too much of that, I guess you could say.
And then you get another interesting season because it's funny, you talk about having a year where it's kind of disappointing in terms of the results. I think the end to the 1920 season is disappointing for another way, right? Because you're in Dukla Trenčín. You had a good year. You put 26 goals away in the regular season, third in the league, which is pretty good. Because some guys can struggle to score in that league. Clearly, you
Yeah.
didn't. You're in the playoff hunt. You're right in the mix there. It maybe felt like a year that team could do something in the postseason, and then the world stops. What was that experience like?
Well, so you don't know about that. Actually, my season was already over
Oh,
anyway.
okay.
So I tore my MCL maybe 5 games to go, and maybe 2 weekends before they shut down everything. So I flew home. I was already home when that whole craziness happened. I remember like one of my
Wow.
close friends, Graham McCormick, who was one of the defensemen. He was like, he had to pack up his whole apartment, him and his wife, like in 4 hours, and had to get him to the
Whoa.
airport. But yeah, I mean, either way, it was disappointing for me because I like that Dukla Trenčín and Trenčín itself is like the hockey mecca of Slovakia. There's so many big names that
Yeah.
have come out of there, and I always compare it to like it's like the Toronto Maple Leafs of Slovakia. They have so much history and all that, and I don't think they had been doing very well in the past seasons, and they kind of just threw us in there and didn't really have any high expectations. I think we were fifth at the time when it shut down, which is pretty good for
Mm.
them. So, I mean, for it to be cut short, yeah, it was brutal. But I loved it there. Like the fans were awesome. I had a great relationship with like the coaches. I still talk to them from time to time. And yeah, I mean, Slovakia kind of gets a bad rep, I feel like sometimes as the league
Mm.
and teams and things like that. But I loved it there. It was awesome.
Was Dukla Trenčín the team that Bouncy went to for a year?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
In context then, because I'd never really put two and two together. Like it being like you say, one of the cornerstones of the Slovak league. To have an import goalie, particularly from a I guess non-traditional market in the UK, a Brit, to go and be their number one, that actually really does put some context to that achievement for him, doesn't it?
yeah. No, for sure. I mean, yeah. Normally they're looking for high-end goalies out of Canada, USA, right? But if I'm not mistaken, I think Bouncy had a really good World Championships that year,
Yep. Yep.
and they really scouted him from there. I'm guessing. But yeah, no. When I was there, we had two Slovakian goalies, and yeah, I don't think there's many import goalies in leagues that don't have like a ton of imports, if that makes sense. Usually they save that for the players, but yeah, so for Bouncy to get there, it's a good achievement.
And then we'll kind of stick back to your career. 2020, 2021 was a weird year, man, for a lot of players. A lot of careers kind of stopped there, didn't they? It was really important to get ice.
Yeah.
You ended up on three different teams. Was that kind of a bit of circumstance with COVID, and was it as much of a whirlwind as it seemed?
Yeah, I mean, again, like definitely disappointing for me to get to that Czech league is, it's a really good league, right? And I was
Mm.
excited, and, but it was tough for me because I had that MCL injury and yeah, everything was shut down here. So no rehab really, no training. I went in there with maybe 3 weeks under my belt of somewhat training because I was still trying to be careful of my knee. And those guys are machines over there, and I don't think
Mm.
at the time the Czechs were following the rules as strictly as Canada was. So they had access to full gyms and all that stuff. Whereas here, like I remember we had to like sneak in our gym, and there was maybe four of us wearing masks to work out. So I definitely didn't come in shape, but that was expected. I mean, they knew that with my injury and what was going on. Um, but again, I don't like bad talking people, but it just wasn't a good experience there. I just feel like, yeah, they didn't really treat me the way that they should have. And um, they kind of tried to help me out and send me to Trenton because they knew I was familiar with it there, and just to try and get my game back and confidence because clearly they saw that I had none. And which I did. I did really well when I was there. We were lucky. We had a couple NHLers that came over because of COVID was
Mhm.
still on. So they came over, the Shore brothers. So we had a really good team there for a month. And then, yeah, they called me back. And then same thing, kind of struggled. And then, yeah, they ended up trading me to Budovice there. And it was kind of stupid. I didn't want to go because there was maybe a month left, and I was just so frustrated with the season already. And they were last place now, so I was going from second place team to last place team. I was just like, I'll just go home and kind of regroup and focus. But I ended up going, and it was fine. It was just a month, and kind of got through it. And yeah, I overall just like a disappointing, probably the most disappointing season I would say as a whole for me. So,
Interesting. Did that kind of influence your decision to go back to Germany because you had a lot of success in Heilbronn when you first came over to Europe?
yeah, I mean, when I went to Landshut, it was kind of we were waiting, and another kind of connected funny story. That Zach O'Brien, who's in Cardiff now, and
Mhm.
I forget what is Marcus Powers. I think they were both there the season before and did really well. And they were supposed to come back to Landshut and ended up bailing last minute and wanting to stay at home. So I think Landshut was scrambling, and yeah, I got the call, and the deal that they offered was really nice and good. And I heard a lot of things about Landshut again, like similar to Trenton. I think it has a lot of history in German
Mhm.
hockey. I think they're in the DL for quite a bit. And I looked, the town looked super nice. So yeah, it was I liked it a lot there. And then yeah, some of the other players they brought in too, like that Sahir Gill, we got along really well and played together. But again, injury there, like I tore my groin, I think in December, and I was out for 8 weeks. So that was tough. I think I only ended up playing like 30 games that season. So
Yeah, I kind of saw something about a kind of a lower body injury and kind of curtailed the year. So I was going to skip and move on to your time in Hanover before you ended up coming over to the UK because
yeah.
Hanover's a real cool town for a start. Similar to what we talk about in Villach there, but it's also really cool because I think I wrote in my notes here it's got two Oberliga teams, but actually now thinking about it, it might be three, which is pretty crazy for UK fans, but if you think about your time in the Ontario League, I mean, there are a few teams that are hanging out in the Greater Toronto area, for example, but still, that must have been a bit of a head spinner.
Yeah, so everyone gets confused when I talk about Indians or Scorpions, both Hanover. But no, it was awesome. Those games were so much fun. Like you get to the rink like 2.5 hours before, stadium would be full, already chanting and going nuts. There's like SWAT teams or like police presence,
Oh,
like you couldn't believe there. Yeah. Oh yeah, because they get into it, and you can't even hear yourself talking on the ice, or if the coach is saying something, like, yeah, it's pretty wild. But I think we definitely had their number that season. We won all the games against them, the Derby games. And I think it was like 20 games in a row or something that the Scorpions had beat the Indians. And then we actually played them in that outdoor game. I don't know if you saw anything on that. That was really cool. We
no,
played
I,
in
I
yeah,
missed
we played
that.
in
Tell
the
us about
Hanover
that.
96 Stadium. I think it was maybe around 30,000 fans in the soccer stadium,
Wow.
something like that. And they had like a whole fireworks show, DJs, all this stuff. It was super cool. That was probably like one of the most coolest experiences I've had, especially playing hockey. So
Yeah, and that's, I mean, German hockey is unbelievable. Like, it's a really good standard. And again, you talk about that pathway in North America, Oberliga, Del 2, and then obviously the Del, they go up a notch, for sure. And I can kind of see outdoor games in the Del, but it's pretty awesome that they've done it in the Oberliga as well, right?
Yeah, well, that's when they started talking about it. Even myself on the team, I was like, well, who's going to come like watch a third tier team, like especially in that big of a stadium? But they did a great job marketing it, and yeah, I think it was close to 30,000, might maybe 20,000, but I don't know. But regardless, still that's quite a big number for that league.
And the Scorpions in general that year had a pretty successful run of things. I mean, like you say, you won all your derby games, you won the North Division, you took a super deep run in the playoffs. You had a good year personally. That's not a bad one to look back on, eh?
Yeah, I think yeah, going into that year with the personnel that we had, I mean, there was nothing expected less than winning. So, which we ultimately didn't really do. But like, yeah, our regular season was amazing. I think we only lost like 3 games. And then we ran into Rosenheim, who ended up winning and getting promoted. I just think they were a little bit deeper. We were running 3 lines; they had 4, and you know how it is in playoffs. Like you just said, it's a grind. I think we kind of just ran out of gas towards the end, even though I think we on paper we were still the better team. But yeah, I think in the past few days I've seen too Hanover, they're loading up again, and they're gonna have a great team again. I think they should win it this year.
Is that another team that you kind of kept an eye on?
Yeah, for sure. Even last year, like I was gonna go back, but for me personally, like I really wanted to get the schooling done that the
Yep.
UK has to offer. That's honestly the biggest draw for me, and it was between them and Cardiff, and I thought, okay, maybe Cardiff, I can get my foot in the door here, and it was a little late at the time to start the school, even though they said I could. But I figured, okay, come to Cardiff this year, and then maybe stay or find another team for the following season to get to school. Because like at the end of the day, that's what I want, and that's important to me. So
Yeah, life kind of distracted you a little bit from the initial goal of going to school A and following the Ontario and the NHL dream. But you've teed us up nicely to talk about time in the Elite League. So Stu, I'll give you the baton again here, bud.
Yeah. So was it really that opportunity for schooling that sort of drove you to the UK? Were you looking around in general, or did Cardiff approach you? How did that sort of move to Cardiff come about?
again, another really crazy, funny story. But yeah, if it wasn't for the schooling, yeah, I think I would have stayed in Germany. Like I like being in Europe, and I like Germany a lot. And yeah, I don't know if they didn't have this school, if I would have made the jump. I mean, yet at least. So, like getting to Cardiff, I was skating with that junior A team that I was supposed to be playing with when I was younger, the Oakville Blades. One of my friends' dad was the assistant coach, so he was nice enough to kind of let me out while because I think the league had already started. So I was getting a little worried, and I just wanted some sort of regular practice schedule. So with these kids, so anyways, one of the goalie coaches that would come once a week came in the dressing room that I was dressing in, and he goes, "Hey, like, what are you doing next season?" I said, "Oh, I don't know. I'm still waiting." And he goes, "Oh, I know someone from Cardiff. Let me text him for you." And it was Franny, Neil Francis. And 3 days later, I was on a plane over there. It's pretty quick and crazy how it happened. Yeah.
Yeah, we often hear about from coaches around how long the recruiting is and how it starts in April and you're going all the way through. That wasn't that wasn't a long recruitment. That was a
No.
short
Yeah. I mean, I knew Justin Crandall
one.
on Cardiff, so he was kind of a point of reference for me, and told me nothing but great things. And he was right. It's such a good organization, and the staff there are awesome, and obviously they have a pretty good team every year. I feel like now that I've played a year and kind of heard the stories. So yeah, no, it was a great time. I loved it there. Cardiff's a nice city too to live in, and yeah, it'll be fun to play against them because I still talk to all the guys pretty much every day. We had such a close team, and yeah, I think we'll be close for years to come. So
And how did your? Because obviously you said you kind of had a good experience down in Cardiff, but how did your expectations of what the UK sort of hockey world was like to how it actually turned out? How did it compare?
You know what? I tell this, a lot of people ask that question, obviously. Like, if you asked me 5, 6, 7 years ago to come to the UK league, I for sure would have said no. Like, that's still when like you saw those heavyweight fighters coming over. Like, I played with Jay Rosehill for quite a long time, Zach Fitzgerald. I know those big guys like Brawler, even, to me, 5, 7 years ago, it was a fighting league, right? They had these big guys coming over and just like scrapping and being wild and stuff like that. And playing last year, like, and you can even see the guys that have been recruited this year. Like, it's a good league. Like, I think it's transitioning a little bit slower than maybe Canada and the US leagues have been, but it's definitely, like, again, that fighting style is kind of falling out, right? And now it's turning into a skill, faster game, and you can see that especially in the UK now. Like, all the players, like, the teams are good. Like, I even say, like, the Belfast, Cardiff, Sheffield's, like, those teams can probably compete with like the lower end Dell teams, or for sure the Dell 2 teams in my experience, or like the Slovakian teams. I'm just trying to think what else. Like, it was interesting too, us being in the Continental Cup, playing like the other European teams. For me, like, I like to be a little bit physical when I can, and I noticed like in the UK, like, a lot of them are North American, or they're the British players that have been playing with the North Americans, so they're anticipating and ready for those hits. Whereas when we played like these European teams, I was just like destroying guys because they're not taught that. So just right there, and that was because I was having a hard time trying to like hit some guys sometimes, and I was like, what's so different? And I realized, like, most of these guys are Canadian or American, and that's like how we were taught to play the game. And when someone's coming and you're ready for it. Whereas the European guys, they don't really expect it. And so it's just a funny comparison, but yeah, it's a great league.
Yeah, it's a good point of comparison as well against the sort of the teams like Delta and Slovakia to see where the Elite League has come. So I think, I mean, we've spoken about it before on the podcast in previous chats. We think the Elite League is growing year on year. The standard is getting better, and and you can see it now with teams, particularly the teams that are competing in the Champions Hockey League, that they are competing with the other sort of bigger European teams, on a regular basis. So I think that's definitely a positive. But obviously, part of last year, you would have already had some trips to the Sky Dome. You've already, seen the facilities and come around. What's your sort of your experience of Coventry as an away player like?
We hated it. We hated it. No, I don't know. It was, for me, it was cold when we were in there. I don't know if it was just the away room, and I like the cold, and I was freezing every time. We would actually bring like portable heaters with us. I remember I got a penalty the one time, and the fans were just ruthless to me behind me there. Which, again, that's all fun. Like, I like it. Now they're on my side, so it's even better. I'm trying to think. Like, even they were yelling at Pete all the time, which was hilarious. I didn't know, but I guess the ice is smaller there. I didn't really realize that. I had no idea. Yeah, and for whatever reason, like, you guys, I feel like, had our number last year. Like, we always had a tight game with you guys, maybe -1 around Christmas time, but it was always like, it wasn't an easy game coming in to Coventry or them, coming to Cardiff. It was always, a tight game, but yeah.
Well, I think certainly the Blaze fan base will take some heart from that, because one of the things that they certainly, I believe, they pride themselves on is making the Sky Dome a difficult, awkward, intimidating place to play. And you're right, the ice is small, the fans are on top of you, it gets loud. It can be. It's not. And I think that's one of the other wrinkles of the UK game, is that you do have the different rink sizes. Not everything is a big Olympic size pad. So you've got the Manchesters and the Coventrys that kind of adds a little bit of a different dimension to the game. So you obviously know a little bit about the club. You've played against them last year, and then at some point there's a conversation between you and Kevin Moore. How does that come about?
Yeah, again, like, I think For me, the biggest thing is to get this school done. So that was kind of my first point to any team that I reached out was, do you have school packages available? And so I spoke to a few teams, and some of them did, some of them didn't, some of them were kind of waiting as well. And then I spoke with Kevin, and I really liked how he sounded and what he was saying about the team and how he's going to build it. And right away he said, yes, we have a school package available. So that was obviously number one for me. But then yeah, he just kind of sold me on what he was going to try and bring the team to be, and what direction they were going. And obviously it's no secret that they're a younger team, or we're a younger team this year. And then me being a little bit older kind of showed them the way. And yeah, I just thought to myself, I was fortunate, like I mentioned before, having the Culinettis or whoever it may be when I was younger kind of show me the way. And I feel like that translated to how I treat those players now. Like I don't, for example, like Josh Waller on Cardiff last year was like one of my best friends on the team, and he was probably the youngest guy on the team. So I don't care who you are or how many years you've played and whatever, as long as you're a good person and good to me, then I'll treat you the same as someone that's played 15 years and I guess considered a grizzled vet. So I think I'm the perfect person to kind of be put in that role here, is kind of be a little bit of a leader and show the way. So yeah, and just at the end of the day, I just thought it was going to be a good spot for me. Again, I just liked what he said and everything about Coventry. So
with the schooling and the setup, with, like you say, with the younger team and yourself as the sort of veteran, is that is it slightly different challenge to what you've sort of had before, and is that sort of like a level of excitement that you get to be a part of something that's building new here in Coventry?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, the school is going to be different and exciting for me. Like, I'm excited to do that. But on the hockey side, yeah, like the last, like Hanover, our expectations were to win the league, and same with Cardiff last year. I mean, this year, obviously, you want to have those expectations to win going in, but having such a young roster, I mean, I don't think you should put that pressure on you right away. Um, just come in and take it day by day and see how we do. But yeah, like for me to kind of help out and, help Kevin kind of build this team and something that's upcoming is exciting for me, because I haven't really been part of that as an older player, I guess. And again, going back to what I just said, I feel like I'm a really good, person to kind of take on that responsibility to help these guys and, whatever it may be, like away from the rink, at the rink. I'm super easy and approachable. I like to have a lot of fun. I'm not like a super serious guy. I mean, when it comes to the game, sure, but like other than that, like you shouldn't have any problem talking to me about anything. So,
and that's something that kind of stuck with me from our talk with Kevin when we interviewed him a few weeks back. He was very much talking about the recruitment involving the right kind of guys. Like it was about that personality and the makeup and the drive to be a part of the sort of vision that he had, and it was, I think it was almost as much importance on that as anything else. And so that seems to me that it kind of everything seems to align well. I'll pass over back to Ed now.
Well, listen, it's really not that long before I guess you're hopping on a plane here. You've already had your summer vacation out west in Banff. We were talking about that before we hit record. How you spending the next couple of weeks before you get over here and we get it going?
Yeah, you're right. It's come. I'm just looking. I think I fly over on the 20th, so just under 30 days here, under a month. Yeah, I'm just gonna start ramping up a little bit more on the ice. Maybe start skating a couple times as opposed to once. And just stay in the gym, and then probably kind of see the last of my friends and family before we get over, and yeah, kind of just relax as much as I can before the season starts and we get going here.
For sure. This has been a lot of fun, bud. I really appreciate you putting some time aside to do this, and looking forward to meeting you in person in a few weeks.
Yeah, sounds good. No, thank you very much for having me on here. It was a blast.
Yeah, guys, thank you as always for joining us on the Blaze TV podcast, and we'll see you real soon for another one of these. Bye for now.